Good evening, folks. Triple Crown here, coming to you from Vancouver, British Columbia. The continuation of the Global War 1939 video series. This topic is going to be tanks or armor. Now, in the original Global War 1939, there was some really cool tanks that one of the reasons I love the game. That was the addition of the KV-2 and the SS Panzer tank and the Tiger tank. This version is going to include light armor, the medium armor, which we know, the introduction of more heavy tanks, tank destroyers, and some amphibious tanks. Now, World War II, the start of around 1939, a lot of nations had the progression. A lot of nations, the only armor they had was light armor. And it was sort of an arms race. And the Germans, as we know, sort of were leading the edge in armor technology. And armor was getting thicker, the barrels were getting longer, and obviously had more punch. And the Allies sort of were a little behind, and they caught up. And then there was introduction of units, more specialized units that were specifically purposed to take out other tanks, and more tanks that were designed for amphibious landings. And not every nation had heavy armor. Not every nation had amphibious tanks. So the theme that we've sort of been going with 1939 is to get unit specific. So we did a lot of history on the types of armor that were used. And, so if your country, for example, the United States, had heavy armor later in the war, well, you were limited in this game to purchase heavy armor, later in the war. And for the Germans, 1939, they didn't have heavy armor, so, they're going to be limited as well, but they're able to purchase the Tiger tanks earlier on. But again, the Germans did not have a whole bunch of Tiger tanks, so there's going to be limits on a lot of these armor in the game. Now, do you need to have all these armor to play the game? No. For the most part, it's kind of similar to a sliding scale, that the light tanks will be a little bit less, attack and defend a little bit less, and sort of sliding scale upwards. Now, the reason I thought it was important to add these, well, a lot of us had a favorite, whether it might have been the M18, Hellcat, it might have been the Sherman, it might have been the KV tank. And so you're going to have the option as your nation now to purchase, up to some nations, I think, will have about 5 different armor units you can purchase. Now, do you want to purchase all of them? Well, that's up to you. Obviously, it gets a little bit more complicated when you have different armor on the board, but it's up to the individual person what they want to do. Now, do I think that a person's going to win or lose the game based on if they only chose to purchase, a medium tank versus a heavy tank, is it going to make that much of a difference? I don't believe it will. I believe, the addition of these units will add spice to the game. It'll make it more historically accurate to have some of these armor in the game. And it is a fine balance, folks. We recognize that. And we played with this, the idea of the units a lot. Armor in particular, I do like it. I had a lot of these sculpts for a while with from HBG, and I've always thought it would be neat to get them into a game. So I'm going to quickly show you some armor. Italy didn't have heavy armor in World War II, so the light armor is going to be on the right, the out-of-box armor. The right one on the right, I believe, is called the L6, the Carro Ammo L6/40, and the other one is the M15/42. But I believe the Italians call their armor Carro Amato. So the sculpt on the right, it can be purchased as a 3D sculpt from HBG. And the Japanese, I'll first show you their amphibious tank, which you can, I believe this is called the Type 2 amphibious tank. You can see it's got a little roof-mounted cannon on the turret there. And Japan, another nation that cannot not purchase heavier armor. And some of these nations, like, for Japan, armor is a little bit more expensive, and it doesn't quite do the same thing. So the tank on the right is the Type 95, and the one on the left is the Type 97. So these can be purchased from HBG. You can see there's quite a difference in size between the, I don't know if the scale is accurate, but you should be able to identify what is what when it's on the game table. Now, German has the most amount of armor in the game. So for your sculpts for the light armor, you can choose to go with the Type 2 Panzer, or this is a 38T. Their medium armor is going to be the Panzer 3, you can see there. And all of these sculpts, and this is a tank destroyer. This is a Stug 3 with a side skirt on it. This is such a bad looking tank, like badass looking. Like this meant for, and yeah, whenever I think about the German armor, it kind of gives me the chills a little bit. They just look so deadly. And this is the Panzer 4. There's going to be a Mark 5 in the game as well. I don't have the sculpt for that one. That's a Tiger tank. You can see just how much bigger the Tigers were than almost all the other sculpts in the game. So you can see the sheer difference in size. And the Americans, they're going to have, their light armor is going to be the Stuart. You can see there, it's just a little guy. This tank, I've always thought it was really cool painted up. And there's the M18 Hellcat. So the Hellcat carried quite a punch. So in this game, the tank destroyers are going to attack a little bit more, but they're not going to have a very good defense. So that's the idea behind the tank destroyer. And I have this is going to be the next tank is a Sherman. So I've because I think it's a cool sculpt, I've got the DD Sherman. It's not an amphibious tank in this game. I just have the sculpt, but this is all available in HBG. I don't believe I use very many out-of-box G40 sculpts, simply because the other sculpts available at HBG are just so much better. On the left is the Pershing, the M26 Pershing, and this is I believe the LV-1 amphibious tank for the Americans. So Japan and United States are the only countries that can have amphibious tanks in this game. And the British are able to also purchase the Stuart. And on the left is a Grant. I just think what a bizarre looking tank with the two turrets. Always like the way that it looks, but it is kind of odd looking. So that is the Grant, and actually this is the Valentine. This is their medium tank, and this is another sculpt if you want to use the Sherman as the medium tank, because Britain used a lot of Shermans. And we will get into the more heavy tanks for the British. The Sherman Firefly. I mean, look at the barrel on that one, and the Churchill. The Churchill obviously had better defense, and this Sherman Firefly is going to have better attack. So all of the tanks are not the same in terms of cost and all of this stuff. But you can see the Firefly versus the regular Sherman. I mean, look at the size of that barrel. I mean, it's just ready to kill a Tiger tank, or at least try. The Russians, the T-26, I believe it's called. Let me have a quick look. T-26, yeah. And they're more well known for is their T-34. This is an out-of-box sculpt, but you can see again the difference in size. The Su-76 tank destroyer. Again, another tank that came with a longer barrel. Didn't have the best defense, and Russia's going to have the option of two heavy armor. The KV1 or KV2 and the IS3 or JS2. Sometimes it's called some different things, but look at the size of the barrel on this one. So, and then some out-of-box sculpt. This is the Sentinel for the Anzac. Canada and the Commonwealth are going to be able to purchase some of these tanks, but not all of them. I don't have, actually forgot to mention, the British are going to have the Comet tank, which I do not have the sculpt for that one. And this is another part of the French Vichy set. This is the Char B. And that's a Chinese Lend-Lease Stuart tank that they can purchase in the game. I think I've mentioned that in other videos. So all of the tanks in this game are going to be able to, blitz two spaces or move two, except for the original, the KV2. It can move two, but it can't blitz two. That's the only tank that can't move two. The light armor, for the most part, I believe they're going to cost 5 IPP, attack at 4, defend at 4. and it's kind of a sliding scale. The medium tanks are going to cost 6, attack and defend at 6, and the tank destroyers I mentioned are going to attack a little bit better. Some of them are a 6, some of them are a 7, and they are going to defend at a 4, I believe. So that's kind of the summary of our. Oh yeah, and the amphibious tanks, they are going to attack at 3, defend at 4, and they give a +1 to an infantry on amphibious attacks for the first round of combat. So, which kind of makes sense. They kind of supported the infantry. So that's it, folks, for the armor in this game. In conclusion of, I guess, the ground units. Going to move on here. It's Thursday, November 10th. So tomorrow in Canada, it's Remembrance Day in the United States and other parts of the world. I know in the United States it's called Veterans Day. I'm not sure what it's actually called in other parts of the world, but I just want to acknowledge that all those who served for Canada and other countries across the world. I'm reminded of a scene from Saving Private Ryan. Towards the end, Tom Hanks was dying, and he looked into Private Ryan's eyes and said, "Earn it." And, you know, I think all of those who sacrificed their lives so we could have freedom, and so, you know, sometimes I think it's important to remember that the freedoms and the things that we had, to be thankful for, you know, those who before us that have sacrificed so much. So that's kind of a somber feeling. I always kind of feel a little bit somber on Remembrance Day in Canada. And in terms of earning it, part of me does believe that, you know, sometimes I feel my grandfather's looking at me after I saw that movie and heard that quote that, they want us to carry on that legacy. They want us to do good. They want us to do well. They want us to have freedoms. And so, yes, imagine some of those folks will be looking down on us. And yes, if that inspires you to maybe try a little bit harder at something or be a better person, then that is the message of this video. Thanks for watching, folks, and stay tuned.